While dying, Adolf Hitler had said that one day my soul will rise from the grave and the world will see that I was right. And you know what? When I was researching this documentary, I came across hundreds of reels on Instagram whose comment section shocked me. Almost every other person is ready to accept that Hitler was absolutely right and he was way ahead of his time. But on the other hand, you will find articles, blogs, YouTube videos from all over the world in which Hitler has been clearly declared evil. So now the question here is, what is the actual truth? Was Hitler really a devil or great, or is there any other side apart from this which has been intentionally hidden from all of us? Hitler good guy bad guy? I am going to say I am neutral. You are saying that Hitler was not a bad guy. Whenever we hear the name of Hitler, only these three things come to our mind. First, Hitler. This one person killed millions of people in such a way that even hell would not have a punishment so painful that it would not exist. Second, if there was no World War II, then World War II would never have happened. And the third thing that comes to our mind as soon as we hear the name of Hitler is antisemitism. Antisemitism means hating Jews, which is a religion of Israeli people mostly, on the basis of their culture and religion. And whenever this word antisemitism reaches our ears, Hitler's face automatically comes in front of our eyes, because due to this Hitler killed 60 lakh Jews by looking at their identity. But now the question arises that can a single person really kill millions of people? Can a single person cause the Holocaust of 60 lakh people of the same religion? Can a single person carry out a world war? Well, how much of this is true and how much is false? You will come to know this by the end of this documentary. And not only this, you will also come to know in this documentary what is the connection of all the market leaders of today, from BMW to IBM and from PSH to Volkswagen, with Hitler's story. And yes, this documentary AOF is such a documentary about Hitler that YouTube may also delete it. That is why before YouTube removes it, watch it till the end and share it with everyone. Now let's get started. I already make it clear that this documentary is not a biography of Hitler. Where was he born? What did his parents do? Where did his childhood pass? How did it pass? You will already find thousands of videos on YouTube about all this. And I don't want to be the one who wastes your 40 minutes by repeating the same old stuff again. We have taken more than 2 months to make this documentary. We have read as much as possible about Hitler. We have gone through books, articles, research papers, his speeches thoroughly. We have personally met many subject matter experts. And we have even spent a whole day separately to design this set. So now I can confidently say that the same Hitler will be discussed in this documentary, who has been hidden most intentionally till date. And the same things will be decoded which the mainstream media has never tapped till date. Hitler 78 years 6 million Hitler research-only country. Human beings have something value they brought to the table. Hitler, applause, music. The 28th of July, 1914 was the day when the First World War had started. The whole world was divided into two parts, Allies and Central Powers, and this war continued non-stop for the next 4 years, i.e. till 1918, in which more than 2 crore people had died. In this war, one of the countries that were part of the Central Powers alliance was Germany. Now many people do not know that Hitler was also involved in World War I. But as a courier boy, during World War I, Hitler's job was to transfer messages between the German army and the headquarters. And one reason for giving this job to Hitler specifically was that whenever he used to deliver a message, the people who listened to it used to praise Hitler a lot. But while doing this work, one day something happened which changed Hitler's life forever. 1918 was the last phase of World War I, and during this time Hitler gets posted in a small village in France, and at the same time a huge attack takes place there in which he gets very badly injured. He cannot see anything with his one eye, due to which he starts running in the wrong direction, and then a British soldier comes and stands in front of him. Henry Tuddy. Now if we see, this Henry was not an ordinary soldier. He was a very trained and skilled soldier. But when he saw that Hitler was already badly injured and he was completely unarmed, he doesn't even have any weapon. That's why, despite being a soldier of an enemy country, Henry puts his gun back and leaves Hitler alive. But little did Henry know that the person he was leaving today, thinking he was an innocent, would later kill millions of innocent people. After escaping Henry's bullet, Hitler somehow reaches a German hospital. His condition had become so bad that due to a gas attack, One of his eyes had become temporarily blind and his left shoulder was so badly injured that his hand kept trembling for the rest of his life. During that time, when he was admitted in the hospital, he got to know such a news that he literally started crying. World War I had officially ended and Germany surrendered, and as soon as Hitler came to know about this, he started crying on the hospital bed itself. This defeat proved so costly for Germany that both their economy and army collapsed, and on the other hand, the morale of their citizens was completely shattered. In return for this defeat, Germany had to sign a treaty called the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty is one of the biggest reasons behind Hitler becoming a dictator. I have explained this in great depth later. But for now, you should understand that this treaty was an agreement due to which very strict restrictions were imposed on Germany economically and militarily, due to which the condition of Germany became worse. Hyperinflation also occurred in Germany due to this treaty, due to which the people there had to carry suitcases full of money to buy a loaf of bread. And the people there were very frustrated with all this. And especially with the government. At that time the Weimar Republic government system was in place in Germany. And because of the Treaty of Versailles, the Germans started blaming their government for the condition of Germany. They felt that their current government was completely corrupt and incompetent, and that is why we lost the war, and because of this we had to sign such humiliating treaties. And in the midst of this instability and outreach, Adolf enters this story. Now look at Hitler, who was a former soldier who had supported his country wholeheartedly in the war situation, and at the same time he was a charismatic speaker who could easily manipulate anyone with his speed. And on top of that, the people of Germany were upset and very angry with the current government. So, all the planets and stars came in favor of Hitler. And the Germans got a new leader in the form of Hitler, and within no time, Hitler went from being an ordinary leader to becoming the dictator of Germany where there was a democracy. So now the question arises that how did Hitler rise from being a common soldier to becoming a dictator? Look, in 1920, a leader named Anton Rexler formed a party named National Socialist German Workers. But later when Hitler entered politics, he repackaged this party and named it Nazi Party, and under this party, Hitler launched his manifesto which he called 25-point program. In this manifesto, Hitler had promised that he will take Germany out of unemployment. He will cancel all the humiliating peace treaties imposed on Germany after the World War. But in this manifesto, he also mentioned that only those people will live in Germany who have German flowing in their veins. That is, apart from the proper German race, all other immigrants will be thrown out of Germany. And the biggest controversial promise of this manifesto was that the people of Jewish religion should be blamed for the bad condition of Germany. Now why should Jews be blamed? There is a whole chapter on this in this documentary. We will come to that later. But for now, understand this much, that through his 25-point manifesto, Hitler had promised the German people that I will make Germany great, and this promise of Hitler won the hearts of the people. And in the meantime, in 1923, Hitler commits a big crime, and for that he is put in jail. What he does is that he rebels to topple the current government of that time, which is called Munich Putsch. But his attempt fails and he is put in jail, and during that time, while sitting in jail, he writes his most famous book Mein Kampf, which means my struggle, my struggle. In this book he writes his ideology and his future plan, and after coming out of jail he reorganizes his scattered party and participates in the elections. But then came 1929, the year of the Great Depression. Germany's economy was already weak and the Great Depression had now set in. Due to which their condition, which was already bad, had become worse, and Hitler took full advantage of this. He used his speeches to spread awareness about the Germans and their ideology. Through this, the Nazi Party was portrayed in such a way that now only the Nazi Party can take Germany out of this poverty. Now the problem was that at that time there was someone else's government in Germany, and at that time the Chancellor was someone else. Just like we have prime ministers, in Germany there is a Chancellor. So if Hitler wanted to come to power, then first of all it was necessary for him to become the Chancellor of Germany. However, by 1932, Hitler had increased his seat share in the parliament and he had reached a prominent position. But still he did not have the majority. Therefore, the power was in someone else's hands. Paul von Hindenburg was the president of Germany at that time. And in 1932, he made a minister named Franz von Papen the Chancellor of Germany. But this von Papen was the person who, due to his revenge and anger, took such a decision that mistakenly made Hitler the dictator of Germany. So what happened was that before von Papen, a minister named Brüning was the Chancellor of Germany. But he was not able to improve the deteriorating conditions of Germany. Therefore, he was removed and von Papen was made the Chancellor. But this von Papen was also not doing anything special, and due to this President Hindenburg removed him too and made von Schiller the new Chancellor. This von Schiller, along with von Papen and his other members, had made such plans that Hitler's Nazi party would be completely destroyed. But we all know that in politics, is anyone ever related to anyone? Where there is a power game, there is no party matter. There, only one's own chair matters, and this von Papen was crazy for this chair. He thought that if somehow I gain support from somewhere and get a majority, then no one can stop me from becoming the Chancellor. And then he had only one option. And that was Hitler. Von Papen secretly conducted some meetings with Hitler and told him everything about how von Schiller was conducting secret meetings behind closed doors to destroy the Nazi party. And then he made an offer to Hitler that you come with me, I will personally go and talk to Hindenburg and make you the Chancellor of Germany, and in return I just want the Vice-Chancellor's seat. Now von Papen's motive behind doing all this was that he and Hindenburg together would make Hitler a puppet chancellor and the real power would indirectly remain in his hands. And anyway, none of the chancellors appointed by Hindenburg was able to fulfill their responsibilities properly. That's why he needed a new face now. And he knew that at that moment he could not find anyone better than Hitler. He hated Hitler only for his extremist ideology. But he thought that anyway we will just use Hitler as a puppet. So automatically he will be under our control. But both von Papen and Hindenburg were unaware of the fact that the person with whom they were playing this manipulation game had already done PhD in manipulation. Hitler accepted von Papen's condition without any negotiation that he himself would become Chancellor and von Papen would remain Vice-Chancellor. Finally, on the 30th of January, 1933, Hitler was made Chancellor of Germany and von Papen was made Vice-Chancellor. Hindenburg and von Papen thought that both of them together would control Hitler. But within just 1 month, Hitler turns the whole game upside down. On the 27th of February, 1933, i.e. exactly 1 month after Hitler became Chancellor, a huge fire broke out in the Parliament of Germany and Hitler directly blamed his opponents for this incident and immediately took emergency powers in his hands and passed the Enabling Act. That is, a law that could give him the power to make new laws without taking any permission from the Parliament. And this act was nothing but a license for dictatorship. Using this act, Hitler eliminated all his opponents one by one. And also removed Ivan von Papen. Later in 1934, Hindenburg died. And soon after that Hitler declared himself the Führer. That is, the supreme leader of Germany, or you can say dictator. And in this way, Germany, where there used to be a democracy, now the flag of dictatorship had fallen. Music. Now we will come to the most important part of this documentary. Just as it is very important to make the foundation of a tall building. In the same way, to understand Hitler through this documentary, how did he become a dictator from a soldier? It was very important to set this context which we have already seen in the previous chapter. So now we come to that part of this documentary which is going to force you to think. At the beginning of this documentary, I discussed one thing with you, that whenever we hear the name of Hitler, only these 3 things come to our mind. First, Hitler did not do anything. Millions of people were killed. Second, World War II would have probably never happened if Hitler had not been there. And the third thing was antisemitism, i.e. hating the Jewish community on the basis of their religion and culture. If seen from the mainstream media's perspective, these were the main 3 reasons that make Hitler a devil. But now let's take off the mainstream media's perspective and wear some investigative perspective. And let's try to decode factually, logically and statistically what the actual truth is. And was Hitler really evil? Or was he very smartly a manufactured evil? The entire Hitler dynasty. So that the blame can be placed on the guilty man. Years of and the deaths of millions of innocent persons. He was able to learn German people. Hitler has it. Successful strategy and manipulation. First of all, let's decode the killings done by Hitler. Look at this carefully. Here I have written some names and some numbers which will blow your mind. The first name in this list is Maro Jidam. He was such a leader of China who became the sole reason for the death of crores of people in just 2 to 3 years. Mao had made a plan that he will make China an industrial powerhouse directly from an agricultural country. And the name of his plan was Great Leap Forward. But no one can imagine how dangerous his plan can be. What he did was that to execute this plan, he forcefully collectivized the lands of the farmers there. That is, he took everyone's land under the control of the government and made people do forced labor. He gave them unrealistic targets like grow so much grain, make so much steel that it was not at all possible according to human capabilities. But what happened in this process was that the officers started submitting fake reports to save their own lives. And due to this, within 2 years from 1959 to 1961, China faced such a huge famine that approximately 3 to 4 crore people died of starvation, and this famine is also called the world's biggest man-made famine. This number of 3 to 4 crore varies a bit from source to source. But no doubt this number was very big. It is said that people literally started eating leaves of trees, and in some places, even soil and human bones were being eaten. And the more horrifying thing was that Mao started a campaign against those who opposed this plan of Mao, which was called Cultural Revolution, and under this he incited many students and common people against those who were opposing Mao, and due to this thousands of people died and thousands of people were tortured mercilessly. The second name in this list is of Joseph Stalin, who was the dictator of the then USSR, i.e. today's Russia. Here in Germany, when Hitler was building concentration camps to kill people, at the same time, Stalin had turned his entire country into a camp in the USSR. It was in 1930 when Stalin was afraid that someone might snatch his chair from him, and what he did for this will send shivers down your spine. In 1936, Stalin got the Great Purge, also known as the Great Terror, done in the USSR. But what is this Great Purge? So the thing was that whoever would challenge Stalin or could challenge him, Stalin killed them all. From army officers to poets, writers, teachers, all of them were either shot dead or sent to the Gulag. And do you know what these gulags were? Arctic and Siberia were 2 such locations in the USSR where the average temperature in winters was -40 degrees Celsius. And Stalin had built huge labor camps at these 2 locations, where people used to work day and night in the freezing cold without sweaters and without enough food for many months. Whoever was sent to this camp, from children to old people, would return as corpses. And not only this, apart from these camps, Stalin had also created a man-made famine like Mao, in which again lakhs of people died. The famine created by Stalin in 1932 and 1933 is called Holodomor. What did he do? He took away the grain from all the farmers of Ukraine and sent it to Moscow, due to which 30 to 40 lakh people died in Ukraine alone due to starvation. If the overall estimate of camps, purges and famine is taken out, then Stalin alone has killed more than 2 crore people. And do you know what is interesting in this? Stalin is the person who has been nominated twice for the Nobel Peace Prize. Let's go a little further down the list. Hideki Tojo, the dictator of Japan. He set up a secret army in Manchuria province of China. A facility was started which was named Unit 731. Now it would be better to call it a human slaughterhouse rather than a facility. You know, the Japanese scientists here used to conduct very deadly experiments on live civilians and prisoners caught in the war. For example, living people were dissected without giving anesthesia so that they could observe the organs inside their bodies live. Plague bacteria, chemicals like mustard gas and biological weapons were tested on these people. They were kept in extreme freezing temperatures and their bodies were seen freezing and then they were dismembered. And many such bone-chilling experiments were conducted in this Unit 731, in which around 50 lakh to 1 crore people were killed between 1936 and 1945. And the irony is that when their deadly experiments were exposed, instead of punishing those scientists, America secretly hired them and used their expertise for its own benefit. This list is full of people like Pol Pot, Ismail Pasha, Winston Churchill, Leopold II who have killed at least 2 million people. So now the question arises that whenever there is talk of mass killings, why does Hitler's name come to mind? Why not these? So the reason for this is character assassination. But why would anyone assassinate Hitler's character? Look, The only difference between Hitler and these other dictators was that they presented their crimes in the name of cultural revolution or development. But Hitler used to openly admit his crimes in his speeches. Music, this Romanian, that is why it became very easy to target him. If you study World War II, you will see that the Allied powers also killed so many innocent people through bombing and famine. But they whitewashed their crimes in such a way that whatever they did it just to stop an evil, and for this they needed a centralized villain who became Hitler. So if we sum it up in one line, it is all about the one who wins the war writes history, and the one who writes history always shows himself as a hero, and to show anyone as a hero, a villain is needed in the story. Otherwise, how will the hero look great? Listen to this carefully. If just a question mark is removed from the headline of the newspaper, then the meaning of that headline changes completely. And it is possible that a very big controversy may also be created because the entire image of a celebrity, a leader, a capitalist rests on that one question mark. So if we look at the same scenario in Hitler's case, doesn't the same pattern appear here? Hitler killed 6 million people. But what about the killing of millions of innocents? What about Mao's man-made famine, which cost the death of millions of people? So am I justifying Hitler's crimes by all this? No. Am I saying that what Hitler did was right? A big no. What Hitler did was no doubt wrong. But was what these people did right? So I am just trying to understand why it is so that for the same reason, a person was given the status of a devil. On the other hand, for the same reason, someone else was either nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, or someone got the title of a philanthropist. Someone's atrocities were given the name of development. And someone's deeds were rebranded as cultural revolution. So, my point is, if the point here is only about mass killings and Hitler is hated for that, then Hitler doesn't even belong in the top 3 or top 4 in the list of mass killers. Hitler kills 2 million white people. He is the most even that ever lived. Leopard gives 20 million Africans. He still doesn't belong on the list of the most weakest people that ever lived. There must be something wrong with this narrative. Totally something wrong with that narrative. It can be written by day, by numbers, by mathematics, by geography. It cannot be written by all the people and nothing else. So according to this list, how right is it to leave all these and hit only Hitler for mass killings? You tell me in the comments. Henry Ford, who was the founder of Ford Motor Company, was the only American at that time whom Hitler liked, and not only liked, but in Germany there is a highest medal called Grand Cross of the German Eagle, which is given only to foreigners. Hitler honored Henry Ford with this medal in 1938, and even in Hitler's famous book Mein Werk, he has written that he is a big fan of a car maker. And this car. The maker was none other than Henry Ford. But now the question arises that why did Hitler have such a soft corner and love for Henry Ford? The reason for this was Henry Ford's anti-Semitic writings against Jews. He believed that the Jews community controls almost every influential thing like banks, media, big unions, and indirectly these people run the world. And that is why Henry Ford bought a newspaper company named Dearborn Independent, which was on the verge of bankruptcy in the year 1918. And further, from 1920 to 1924, he started publishing a weekly series named The International Jews: The World's Problem through this newspaper, and that too on the front page of the newspaper, due to which millions of people from America to globally were ready to believe that Jews are really a threat to the world, and Hitler liked this anti-Semitic stance of Henry Ford very much. But now you must be thinking that what did the Jews do that Hitler and Henry Ford hated them so much, and Hitler is infamous for this anti-Semitic reason? So to understand this we have to go back a little. Look, everyone thinks that the atrocities that happened against the Jews were only in Germany, and that too was only because of Hitler. But what if I tell you that this is just 0.1% of the story? The remaining 99.9% story is something else which the main media never touches. Now first look at this table carefully. In this year column, you see 722 BC 586 BC here, this 1493-1948. Do you know what these years are? Well, before that let us take a look at this country column. Here, the Roman Empire, England, France, Spain, Austria, Portugal, these countries that are visible, do you know what they are? These are the years and the countries from where the Jewish community was expelled. That is, Jews were being continuously expelled from some country or the other in every corner of the world. And even today Jews complain about this. Every place is a single place, but the question is why, and the even more question is what is Hitler's connection with all this? What is Hitler's connection with all this? To understand this, it is very important to first find the answer to the question why Jews were expelled from almost every country. So look, in the beginning, when Jews were being expelled, the main reason for that was their religion. Now why was this religion a problem? If we go too deep into this, then a separate documentary will have to be made on it. But for now, understand this much in general, that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, these three religions are called Abrahamic religions. And due to some religious contradictions in these three religions, there used to be conflicts among them. And even according to the New Testament of the Bible, Jesus Christ was crucified by the Jews. That is, he was killed. And due to these religious conflicts, the Jews, who are a minority community, were expelled from different countries. They neither got jobs nor did they get that respect in the society. So now what happened is that if the system was not accepting them, then they created their own system, and since it was a matter of survival extension, then they started entering whatever business was possible, and most of those businesses used to be illegal or shady. These people entered every sector like money laundering, prostitution, art, entertainment, banking, and made so much money that even today almost every top company is owned by Jews. Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, Vanguard, Warner Brothers, Universal Pictures, Meta, Dell, Oracle, and the list is very long. And let me tell you, just watch this video. You will not understand its language, but you will understand from the subtitles. Watch carefully. According to this video of this Muslim Law Enforcement Service Internet ISP Hazir Kuldika, today most of the websites are owned by Jews. But on the contrary, in Israel, where majority of Jews live, a bill was passed in 2016 to ban websites. It was said about Jews that they could go to any extent for their benefit. So what is the point here? The point is that from central banking to media and entertainment to oil, the one who has control of all these sectors can easily control the whole world. Now let us come to our question, that what was Hitler's connection with all this? Look, as I told you in the beginning, Hitler fought with all his heart and soul on Germany's side in the First World War. But later he came to know that Germany had lost the war. During that time, another thing was discussed in Germany, that during World War I, the Jewish community of Germany had supported the enemy countries and betrayed their own country. Although many people deny this, but during that time this thing was a topic of discussion. It definitely did. Secondly, Germany had lost the war, and due to that their economy and their overall situation had deteriorated. Thirdly, a handful of Jewish population controlled the majority of institutions in Germany. Fourthly, those who don't know, let me tell them that Hitler was a very skilled artist who had made such paintings that one would just keep looking at them. But when he went to take admission in Vienna University in 1908, he was not given admission there. Now call it coincidence or whatever you want to say. But the professor who refused to give admission to Hitler was a Jew. And fifthly, as I have also told you, due to religious contradictions, there was always a conflict between Christians and Jews. So what happened was that when Hitler entered politics, he knew that if he wanted to come to power, he would have to take up an issue that would hit the masses, and because of religious conflicts among the Germans, there was already hatred for Jews. On top of that, there were allegations against Jews in World War I, and Jews were also a micro-minority. So Hitler found this to be a strong issue to position himself as a politician, and he started spreading hatred for Jews openly through his speeches. Later, because of this hatred, Hitler brutally killed 60 lakh Jewish population. However, according to many historians, the number of 60 lakh is denied. But what I feel is that whether it is 60 lakh or 6 lakh or 6,000, crime is crime. And now we come back to those three things for which Hitler is hated. And our second point was anti-Semitism is hate towards Jews. And this is why Hitler is hated all over the world. Even if you go through the narratives of mainstream media and history textbooks, it will seem that Hitler invented this anti-Semitism in the world. But as I already showed you this table, how historically, there has been hatred towards Jews in many countries for thousands of years. And all this has not happened in one day, 1 year, or 10 years. This thinking of anti-Semitism has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. What Hitler did was that he made that thinking his weapon and showed the world that if public sentiments are used properly wisely as a tool, then even a normal soldier can become a dictator. So now the question arises that if the thinking was already prevalent for thousands of years and was weaponized by Hitler, then how far is it right to blame only Hitler for antisemitism? If we are talking about antisemitism, then from England to Spain to France to the Middle East, almost every country was filled with antisemitism. And a country is made by people. That means when the people of these countries stood up in support of the hate trade of Jews, only then it became possible to expel Jews. Then why was only Hitler's name associated with antisemitism? Why not anyone else? The few pictures you are seeing behind me have one thing common in all of them. All of them have either been assassinated or some major attacks have taken place on them. And these people are not ordinary people but have been presidents and leaders of big countries. John F. Kennedy 1963 assassinated. Abraham Lincoln 1865 assassinated Gaddafi, who was the de facto leader of Libya. He was assassinated in 2011. But the question is who assassinated the leaders of such big countries? And most importantly, why? Now see, if we look closely, there is no concrete evidence available anywhere. Now why is it not there? This is a different issue in itself. But if you are that intelligent, then understand that only some secrets are true. And that is why the government never touches those issues. But whether the government presents evidence of this to us or not, we can decode the truth by doing research, connecting some dots and observing some patterns. So this is the pattern behind the assassination of all these people which we have observed. If you observe closely, you will notice a very shocking pattern here. All of them had challenged the private bankers in their respective governance. That is, in a way these people had created a new currency of their own and were running their countries without taking any funds from any private bank, and not only that but they were also developing the country from every angle, GDP, employment, infrastructure, without taking a single penny as loan. That is, in a way, if seen, these people had proved that money is just an illusion. That is, you can run the country without taking a loan from any private bank by using some smart strategies. And history is witness to this. Whoever has challenged the bankers or financial institutions, this is what happened to them. Either assassination or they were killed. Make them puppets. And let me tell you that Hitler did something similar in 1933. He shut down many central banks in Germany and created his own currency called Mefu bills. Using these bills, Germany brought down its unemployment, which was 30%, to just 2% in 5 years, and built top-notch infrastructure in the country, and during that time Germany's GDP also skyrocketed. But as I said earlier, history is witness that whoever has challenged the bankers or financial institutions has suffered badly. And the rest is history. And you know, many historians also believe that this was also one of the reasons behind World War II. Now I will ask you a question, and what is the first answer that comes to your mind? You tell that in the comments. And the answer should come very quickly. Because of whom did World War II happen? I bet only one name would have come to the mind of 99% people. And that is Hitler. And the reason for this is also very simple, because this is what we have been taught in history textbooks since childhood. So if this is the global narrative, then it is quite natural that Hitler's name comes to mind first. But have you ever asked yourself whether a single person can carry out a world war? Can a single person be so powerful? Let's investigate this thing a little. That after all, was Hitler the real culprit of World War II, or something has been hidden from all of us? 1918, this year World War I ends. The Allied powers win and these countries lose. Now very humiliating and oppressive treaties are imposed on the countries that lose. For example, I talked about a treaty in the beginning of this documentary. It is the Treaty of Versailles, which was imposed on Germany. Now I will tell you why this treaty is so important to understand why the Second World War happened. This Treaty of Versailles was a peace treaty in name, but in reality it was a peace treaty which broke the back of Germany. Under this treaty, Germany was told that you started the war and you are guilty for it. That is why now you will have to pay compensation for everything. Such huge reparations were imposed on Germany that their gold reserve, their industries, their dignity, everything was destroyed. Not only this, even their army and navy were disbanded. And even their borders were artificially redrawn. And similar humiliating and horrible treaties were also made with Austria and Hungary. That is why these treaties destroyed the future of not only these countries but also an entire generation of those countries. Now see, what happened was that many people were dying of starvation, unemployment was increasing. The country's economy was falling down. And because of all this, the lifestyle of the people here was getting worse and worse. That is why the anger in their minds was increasing. These people were just looking for a leader who could fix this downfall, and then Hitler entered. Now many historians say that Germany was silent, which tolerated these treaties for so many years. If some other big country had been in its place, then the Second World War would have happened long ago. So does this mean that Hitler has no connection with the Second World War and the bullet was fired only by placing a gun on his shoulder? The answer is no. Hitler's purpose may have been good or bad, but the path he adopted, the genocides, the gas chambers, the Holocaust he caused, that was definitely horrible. But was Hitler the only villain? So the answer to this is also no. He was a sure shot. How? Look, any war of this magnitude is not the work of a single person. Such wars happen when a whole system is involved in it. You know, companies like BMW and PSH to IBM and Volkswagen supported Hitler in a direct or indirect way. IBM literally invented a technology that helped in identifying and killing the Jews. So now the question arises that are these people not equally responsible for all the people who died in World War II or the Holocaust? Now, what is the answer to this? Apart from this, there is another thing why Hitler is not a single evil but a shared evil. Just like China has grabbed the land of India, Hitler had grabbed the land of many countries like Poland, Austria, France, and some regions of Belgium to expand the territories of Germany. And these actions of Hitler are also considered one of the major reasons for the Second World War. And due to this, the entire blame of this war is put on Hitler. But no one discusses this thing, or it is discussed very rarely, that before attacking these countries, England had signed an agreement with Hitler which was called Unique Agreement. According to this agreement, England had given Hitler a free hand to do whatever he wanted with this country of Czechoslovakia. We will not interfere in it. Meaning, when it comes to others, their morals and ethics are pushed to some corner. But when the same villain whom they had let loose attacks them, he becomes evil. So again, was England not equally responsible for instigating World War II? Now, apart from this, there is another important thing when Hitler was attacking other countries. He was expanding Germany's territories. During the same time, Japan was creating terror in China and Korea to expand its empire in Asia. On the other hand, Italy was invading Africa, and the Soviet Union had signed an agreement with Germany in the name of Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. In this agreement, both the countries, Germany and Soviet Union, had made a deal that they would divide Poland into half. And not only here, such different blunders were happening in different places all over the world. So if you put all these events, actions of different countries, psychology of all on one page and observe them closely, then you will come to know that the World War did not happen because of a single person but because of the collective mistakes of the whole world, and especially Europe. Because the atmosphere in the whole world was such that it just needed a spark, and Hitler became that spark. Look, nothing is completely black or completely white. Actually, it is grey. Again, I will repeat that no doubt Hitler was a villain, but he was not alone. In this drama, there were other characters standing on the stage. But the spotlight was only on Hitler's head. Why? Because he had lost, and the one who loses has to be shown as good, bad, right, wrong. This is decided by the winner. Now, before you people divide me into categories like leftist, rightist, extremist, pro-Hitler, anti-Hitler, anti-Semitic, I want to tell you something very important. What was my purpose behind making this documentary? Was my purpose to justify the actions of Hitler? No. Was my purpose to portray Hitler as a hero? No. And how can I call Hitler a hero? You know, Hitler's own grandson never married anyone and never had any children. Because he wanted the lineage of Hitler to end in this world. So if Hitler's own family does not want any other Hitler to be born in this world, then who am I to glorify Hitler? So now the question is, what was my actual purpose behind making this documentary? So through this documentary I want to present to you that side of history which is often hidden from mainstream history, and the main purpose of this documentary is that you understand how this world actually works or how it is run, and you also understand what were the power struggles, manipulations, and hidden agendas that shaped the 20th century. And as I said earlier, and I repeat it once again, that the one who wins the war writes history, and the one who writes history always shows himself as a hero, and to show anyone as a hero, a villain is needed in the story. Otherwise, how will the hero look great?